हरि ओम। वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। गुरु ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुदेवो महेश्वरः गुरु साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste, friends. Welcome to the session 15 of the new series Gift, Gita for Inner Freedom and Transformation, a study of selected verses from Bhagavad Gita based on Shankara Bhashya. We are at the concluding verses of chapter 3, that is Karma Yoga. In the last session, we saw how all actions are born out of gunas, how a mudhatma and a gnani handle this, what happens to the people who act without any desire by surrendering to the Lord, and the ones who do not, and Krishna's advice to keep away from raga dvesha. In today's session, we are taking up the last set of verses from 36 to 43 of chapter 3. Arjuna asked Krishna in verse 36, what is that power that forces a being to commit sins? In the next 7 verses, Krishna explains how Raga Dvesha Dio only are responsible for this, and how the karma occupies the indriyas, kama occupies the indriyas, manas and buddhi to cloud the jnana and destroys a jivatma. Krishna finally advises Arjuna in the verse 43 to realize the supremacy of Atma, take control of Indriyas and mind with the help of intellect, and kill this enemy called Kama. We have Srimati Anjali, Dr. Netra, Dr. Divakar, Srimati Apeksha, and Kumari Vindhya to explain this to us. Dr. Hegde sir, as always, will give the inner aspects. I request Dr. Hegde sir to give us the introduction to the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Sri Venkatesh Prasad, for a very nice introduction for today's class. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Pariyantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We have studied the Bhagavad Gita many times. One thing is very clear for all students of the Gita, that each time you study one aspect of the Bhagavad Gita, that verse, that chapter gives you a much clearer meaning than ever before. As part of the introduction to the concluding verses of the 3rd chapter that we have been doing, I will give you a quick summary of all the verses that we have gone through so far. What is Karma Yoga? Karma Yoga is right action and right attitude. In the 2nd chapter, we've had a very nice summary in some of the most famous verses of Karma Yoga. And the 3rd chapter, titled Karma Yoga, is a absolutely practical and a brilliant chapter on how to convert our everyday action into worship. What is right action? Right action is that which is meant not only to benefit us, but to benefit others also. This is what is called sattvic action. And therefore, we should do less of rajasic actions, which are selfish actions, and to certainly avoid tamasic actions. Actions can be performed from the body. In Sanskrit, is called kaika, or from the speech, vachasa, or from thoughts. So in thought, word, and deed, can it be right action and right attitude? We had one famous verse in the 2nd chapter, Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. Vyavasayatmika Buddhi means just like a farmer has to do a lot of planning, so too our spiritual journey involves a lot of planning. And what is the planning involved in our spiritual journey? We should be very clear what is my means and what is my goal. My means is Parama Purushartha or Moksha. Swamiji has told us any number of times, Moksha is possible only through spiritual knowledge or Jnana. Jnanam is possible only when you have Jnana Yogyata. Jnana Yogyata comes through Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga. And who gives you this sadhana and when? It is a guru who helps you. So I need to see what is my means and what is my goal. So, sattvic action, can I convert my everyday action? So much of every day is spent in taking care of yourself. Now, some teachers have called the work that you do for yourself as Atma Puja. Take your body as a temple in which the Lord resides. So, even giving yourself a bath, putting on your clothes, give yourself a rest. Every action in thought, word, and deed can now become a sadhana. It becomes sublime. Having finished with right action, what is right attitude? Attitude is two things. Whatever action that I'm doing it as Ishvara Arpana. I'm doing it for somebody I have great regards for. And how do? You give your very best. You enjoy as you do it. You give your 100%. And when you love what you do, and when you're doing something for whom you love, there is no burden, even though you are working very hard. And because you enjoy what you do, there is no sense of time. Remember, it is my need. I'm not doing anybody a favor. And when that attitude is there, the joy is in itself. The action itself, the joy is intrinsic. It takes us some time to orient to those actions where we don't see any immediate benefit. And part of Sattvic karma is Pancha Mahayajna, which we need to be able to find time every day for. Having completed Ishvara Arpana, the second is called Prasada Buddhi. That means whatever is the outcome, let me be able to accept it gracefully. In this chapter, we have the first question of Arjuna. And Arjuna asks a very genuine question. Oh Krishna, you consider Jnana Yoga as very important. Jayase chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana. Although you consider Jnana Yoga as superior, why are you forcing me to do this cruel action? Sri Krishna explains in a very famous verse number 3, which has been very nicely explained by Swami Dayananda and our Guru Swami Paramarthananda. Lokesmin duvidha nishta pura prokta mayanaga jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yogina. We have a choice in the kind of a lifestyle. Pravritti marga, that means a life of action, or nivritti marga, a life of withdrawal. That is the lifestyle as which we have a choice. But as far as the sadhanas are concerned, I told you about the Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. You have to do Karma Yoga, get Jnana Yogyata, and then do Jnanam as far as sadhanas are concerned. And in this verse, there is a very clear explanation that there is no choice as far as the sadhana of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga is concerned. Jnana Yoga is the only means for liberation. Jnana Yoga requires Jnana Yogyata, and Jnana Yogyata comes from Karma Yoga. In the fourth verse, immediately after this famous verse, Sri Krishna says, Na karmanam anaramba naishkarmyam purushoshnate. That means simply sitting quietly does not guarantee a person gets moksha. Why? It is only through knowledge a person gets moksha. And also Sri Krishna says, it is impossible for all of us who are not so spiritually evolved to give up all actions because we are forced into activity by our very nature or our gunas. Nahi kaschit kshanap kapapi. Akarmakrit. You cannot remain quiet even for 1 second. That was verse 5. Sometimes you may be able to control your actions and get into an ashram like environment. But what happens to your mind? In this famous sixth verse, Shri Krishna says, Karmendriyana samyamya ya asate manasa smaran. Indriyarthan vimoodatma Mithyachara sa uchyate. Who is a mithyachara? You may externally seem to be controlling your sense organs, but what is happening to your mind? Your mind is ruminating on all that you are missing. So karma still continues in the mind, and therefore, this is the problem unless there is spiritual evolution that happens. In the 7th verse, Shri Krishna gives what is called asakta. This is the key word. Do all your actions with a sense of detachment. The detachment is my happiness is not dependent on persons, objects, or situations. So, right action and right attitude. Moving on, Shri Krishna in the subsequent verses brings about 4 important aspects from the 8th to about the 20th verse, where he talks about Karma Yoga as Agnya, as an order for an immature person, as a Yajna for one who is able to understand. That means, can you do it out of gratefulness? Whatever you do, do it as an offering. Third is we know that Karma Yoga is a sadhana which gives you eligibility. And fourth is Dharma. That means if you don't do it, there will be a problem because someone in the whole cycle of things, the whole cycle gets upset. So in the 8th verse comes the strong words, Niyatam Kuru Karma. You must do. This is called Agnya. In the 9th verse comes Yajnartha. Can you do it as a Yajna? In the 10th verse, Shri Krishna brings the example of how Brahmaji, the creator, has given us our mind. Initially, you can use what is called sakama karma. You can use your mind to fulfill all your desires because our mind is like a kamaduk or a parijata tree. It is a wish fulfilling tree. Whatever you program your mind, it will come true. So initially, it is okay to have sakama karma, but from gradually you have to move from sakama to nishkama. So in all these verses, how is karma yoga summarized? Avoiding karma or inaction does not guarantee peace of mind or moksha. Inaction is impossible because of our gunas. As an ideal mind is a devil's workshop, all the suppressed desires can come up, and therefore, in the verses in today's class, you will see how we really have to work on our mind. So these are some of the key verses or key points to take home as far as Karma Yoga is concerned. Without Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga is impossible. Without Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga is incomplete. Therefore, follow Karma Yoga, get Jnana Yogyata, get Jnanam, and be free. In the subsequent verses, Krishna brings in the attitude of Yajna. Here, Yajna means being grateful. Someone who is not grateful will have a spiritual downfall because they have a feeling that all their accomplishment is because of their own efforts. We should remember all the time that we are standing on the shoulders of those who have come before us. God has helped us through so many ways, through our parents, through our teachers, and to our friends. And we should be grateful for all of them and for all the situations that have brought us this opportunity to be able to come to this spiritual study. Give me a minute to share you this, how we can be grateful always. I asked for strength that I might achieve. I was made weak that I might learn humbly to obey. I asked for health that I may do greater things. I was given infirmity that I might do better things. I asked for riches that I might be happy. I was given poverty that I might be wise. I asked for all things that I might enjoy life. I was given life that I might all enjoy all things. I got nothing that I asked for, but everything I hoped for. And almost despite myself, my unspoken prayers were answered. I am among all men most richly blessed. This is the attitude of gratefulness. When you have this Ishvara Prasada Buddhi, then you will realize that karma exists because of Brahma. All this is brought out in the 3rd chapter itself. Krishna says the Vedas come from the Lord and we exist because of God. Tasmat, therefore, niyatam sarvagatam Brahma. Be aware of that all-pervading God. And in the 7th chapter, we have a nice verse which says, Sutre Manigana Eva. Even though I may not be able to see it, let me be very sensitive to that invisible presence of the Lord all the time and be grateful to God. Before we come to these concluding verses, Sri Krishna very importantly brings in a combination of Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. And he says even a Jnani has to do karma. Why? Yad yad acharati shreshta tattad eva itara janaha. That means whatever, uh, whatever an accomplished person does, others just follow that. And therefore, when a person has certain amount of accomplishment is well known, and even though he knows that he has nothing to do, Sri Krishna gives an example of himself, that I am the Lord of all 3 worlds, but you see how I am working, and the example of King Janaka as role models. In the 3rd chapter, there are 2 very important verses. I will touch on this and conclude my summary of this chapter until today's class. Yestu atmaratirev syat atmatriptasya manavaha atmaneva cha santushta tasya karyam na vidyate tu. So there is a change in topic. Atmaratihi. That means, rati means to revel. One who revels on himself. Such a person who has tripti, who is complete in himself. Atmaneva santushta, who is happy with oneself. For such a person, see, such a person is one who has broken the hridaya granthi of avidya kama karma. And there is no ignorance, there is no karma, there is no karma. Scriptures say, once you have discovered that divinity in you, Atmarati Atmatripta, now you have no binding desires. For such a person, what is there to be done? And as such a person realizes that my fulfillment is not dependent on my actions or my inaction. Naiva tasya kritenartho na akritena kaschana. Na chasya sarva bhuteshu kaschid artha apshraya. Now, I am not dependent on any object, any person, any situation for such a person. Now, what is there to be accomplished through my actions or through my inactions? Because such a person does not have any form of ashraya. He has no dependence on objects, persons, or situations. This is a feeling of purnatvam. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. And based on this, Vidyaranya Swami has brought about what is the Tripti Deepa, which we studied last year, an entire chapter of Panchadashi based on 1 verse of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Atmanam Ched Vijaniyat Ayam Asmiti Purusha Kimichan Kasya Kamaya Shariram Anusanchvaret. Now, such a person is very busy doing actions, but not for fulfillment, but does it with fulfillment. Verse 30 is the complete summary of this chapter. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyasya chetasa. Now, with a clear idea that I am here for spiritual advancement, I offer all my actions to the Lord, nirashi, with no private or no binding desires, nirmama, no sense of mine, vigata jwaraha, without a sense of feverishness, which is a very nice definition of Karma Yoga. Now, Karma Yoga is right action. But we know in our daily life, even though I know what is right, I tend to do what is wrong knowingly. Why does this happen? A very genuine question asked by Arjuna. Verse 36 by Anjali. Anjali, please.
Thank you, sir. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The 36th verse goes like this. अर्जुन उवाच अथ केन प्रयुक्तोऽयं पापं चरति पुरुषः अनिच्छन्नपि वार्ष्णेय बलादिव नियोजितः. The meaning is like this. Arjuna asked, O Krishna, then compelled by whom does a person sin, even though unwilling, as though he is forcibly persuaded? Karma Yoga urges one to dedicate all actions to God while conforming to Swadharma. This question asked by Arjuna is undoubtedly a very important and valid question. Through this question, we can also see an introspective Arjuna who is now conscious of certain unknown forces working within himself, which are obstructing his own higher impulses. God has given us discriminative power to know what right is and what is wrong. We can easily differentiate it using our own intellect. Similarly, scriptures are also there to guide every one of us on what dharma is and what is adharma. Scriptures present karma yoga as healthy and violation of karma yoga as spiritually destructive. When everyone can intellectually discriminate between the right and the wrong actions, why is it so that one constantly gets tempted to do the wrong as sin? Next slide, sir. This paradoxical confusion existing between one's ideology and one's own action is a big problem that every human being faces. As Duryodhana beautifully pointed out, Janami dharma nachami pravritti. I know the values, but I cannot follow. Janami adharma nachami nivritti. I know it is wrong, but I cannot avoid it. Kenapi devena hridistitena. There is some God sitting inside my heart. Yatani yuktosmi tatha karomi. And I do things as he commands. Is this paradoxical confusion an external force? Not at all. There seems to be some force in our heart which forces us to do all sorts of atharmic, sinful actions. Some call it Satan. For others, it is God Himself. Since it is perceived to be against one's own will, some even doubt the existence of free will. Now, what is a sin? Every religion speaks about sin, but most of them doesn't actually explain it. Nobody does a sin by knowing. In case a person doesn't really know whether the action is good or bad, then that person cannot be considered as a sinner. When in ignorance a person does something, it is not a sin. Sin is only then when you know it is wrong, but you are tempted away to make a compromise with your own intellectual convictions and do it for the immediate joy of sense pleasure. What is that force sitting inside our heart tempting us to make such compromises? On behalf of all of us, Arjuna asked this question to Krishna. Knowing it is wrong, why does a human being commit adharma? What is the force that impels one to commit an adharmic act? Anichanapi, that is, even though he does not want to be an evil person, even though he want to be only a dharmic person, how come a person commits adharma? O Krishna, tell me what is that unknown force by which human being is forcibly engaged to tell a lie, to be corrupt, to be angry, and to be jealous? Hey Varshnaya, hey Krishna, tell me, persuaded by which unknown principle does a person commit adharma? In the coming verses, Krishna answers Arjuna about the forces that drive a person to commit sin, and he also gives solutions to overcome and transcend these negative forces. Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anjali, for a nice explanation of this verse, where we can empathize with what Duryodhana says. I know what is right, but I can't make myself to do it. I know what is wrong, and I can't keep myself from doing what is wrong. So Krishna will answer this, and this will be explained to us by Dr. Netra. Dr. Netra, please.
Namaste, Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. With the 35th verse, Lord Krishna has completed the topic of Karma Yoga, which is the main theme of third chapter. And Karma Yoga is the important first stage of spiritual sadhana so that a person becomes fit for Jnana Yoga. Now, Arjuna's question is this. In the next slide, every human being has got discriminative power. Everybody knows what is proper, improper. Even a thief knows that stealing is improper. That is why he does the stealing action secretly. Duryodhana said, I know what is dharma. I am not able to follow. I clearly know what is adharma, but I religiously do that only. Why do I do that? There seems to be some kind of devil, some kind of powerful force within me which makes me act against my conscience. Therefore, what is that force which makes a person violate dharma in spite of his desire to be noble? In many religions, they put this force as an external principle, a Satan or some devil, some Rakshasa, an external force which is making us violate dharma. Here, Arjuna wants to know, is there any external force that is determining my action? Or is it something within myself? And if it is so, do I have some control over it? Therefore, do we have really a free will at all? In the next slide, from these verses up to the end of the chapter, Krishna answers Arjuna's question. The Lord replied, it is this desire, it is this anger born of Rajoguna. It is insatiable and very sinful. Know this to be an enemy in this life. In the next slide, Krishna points out that there is no external force controlling us. There is no external angel, devil controlling us. Whole thing is within ourselves only. What is that basic force? It is ajnanam. Ignorance is the cause of all problems. Sheer ignorance working at two levels. In the initial level, ignorance with regard to adharma and dharma. And at a higher level, it is ignorance with regard to atma, anatma. So, dharma, dharma, atma, anatma, viveka, ajnanam is the devil. Next slide. This basic ajnanam alone expresses in the form of two forces known as kama, krodha. And therefore, in the following verses, Krishna is going to discuss the problem of kama, krodha, the source, the remedy, medicine to this disease of kama, krodha. So these are the three topics. Kama, krodha, swarupam, kama, krodha, karanam, kama, krodha, parihara. This is the threefold topic. So first, Krishna introduces that. Sri Bhagavanu Vacha. So, what is your enemy to follow dharma? He says, Kama Esha, Krodha Esha. Kama means desire, Krodha means anger. Kama means that desire which is experienced by every human being intimately. It does not come from outside and varies from individual to individual. The presence of desire is universal. And how are they born? Rajoguna Samudbhava. In the next slide, these two powerful forces obstruct karma yoga or the dharmic way of life. The reason is the nature of karma is that it is Mahashanaha, great eater, glutton, Gundotara. He will go on eating without limit. There is no way of fulfilling the desires. Any amount of desires we fulfill, it will never end, but it will only expand more and more. When I do not have any money at all, I need 100 rupees. Once I have 100, the next plan is to have 1000, Laksha. I want to become an MLA. Small king, emperor with many kings, Chakravarti. Am I happy at that time? No. I want to be the emperor of the heavens. The net result is what? There is no end to the desires. All the desires are different expressions of one basic desire. That is, I feel I am incomplete, apurnaha. Vedanta says, an incomplete one can never become complete by acquiring things. Finite one through acquisition can never become infinite. Finite plus finite is equal to infinite? No. Therefore, our very approach is illogical. Swami Chinmayananda nicely puts, happiness is nothing but the number of desires you fulfill divided by the number of desires you have. Suppose you have 10 desires and you keep on completing each one of them, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Are you happy when you complete the 10th desire? No. You realize now that it has become 10 by 100. So the number of desires has increased. So this basic problem you can discover only if you lead a religious life, if you study the scriptures. A religious life plus scriptural study is required to know that my very direction is wrong. In the next slide, how does karma obstruct? By distracting your mind to materialism, and krodha is also a problem. Anger makes a person violent, and violence is himsa. Anger makes a person violent both verbally and physically. Many people are not physically violent, but they have a very sharp tongue. Every stage they will strike. That is Mahapapam. Therefore, anger makes me do papam, and papam brings me down the spiritual ladder. So, desire and anger are they two different entities? But no, they are one and the same enemy from two different angles, two sides of the same coin. Shankaracharya says in the second chapter, the obstructed desire gets converted to anger, obstructed desire turns to anger, fulfilled desire turns to greed. So these are three roads to hell, three express highways to hell. It's a big road, not a narrow lane, because many people are going, and the three roads are Kama, Krodha, Tata, Lobha. So in the next slide, in conclusions, from 36th verse onwards, Lord Krishna discusses on why he doesn't follow dharmic way of life. Ajnanam, ignorance, is the cause of all problems. Kama esha, krodha esha, rajoguna samudbhava. How to handle that, Krishna will tell from subsequent verses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Netra, for a very clear explanation with very nice illustrations, giving us three important reasons: Kama, Krodha, and Rajoguna, which is Maha Ashanaha, which is a great devourer, which is a great sinner, and which is a great enemy. But what do we do about that? In three verses, Krishna will answer this, which will be explained to us by Dr. Devakar. Dr. Devakar, please.
Thank you, sir. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So we have seen that it is indeed our internal enemy, Kama, which is the primary culprit for all of our sufferings. Obstructed Kama leads to Krodha, which then leads to Moha and then Matsara. That which is enriched Kama leads to Lobha, Moha and Mada. So Kama is the primary internal enemy. Like Arjuna, most people are aware of this fact but feel so helpless as the mighty Kama, mighty desires, seem to find its way into the mind and then dictate the terms. How does this Kama operate? Why is it so powerful? We will see that in the next slide. Verse 3.38. Dhumre navayate vanhir yatha darsho malena cha tatolbe navruto karpasthatha tene davrutam. Kama, desires, cloud our viveka shakti, our discriminative or thinking faculty. Three examples are taken by Sri Krishna to explain this. The first one is smoke covering the flame, therefore the flame is not bright anymore. Second one is the dust covering the mirror, therefore a mirror can't reflect clearly. Third one is the amniotic sac. Here Garbha refers to amniotic sac as explained by Shankara Bhashyam. Covering amniotic sac covering the fetus. Fetus has to wait for at least 9 months to come out and become free and independent. So all three examples says that something obstructs the function of the other thing. This is avaranam. Again, all three examples are to explain the three different kamas, three different desires that we all have, and how this obstructs our viveka is explained. Adi Shankaracharya explains that in the first example, where the smoke covers the fire, it is only the brightness quality of the fire which is covered, but not the heat. This covering of the smoke in a fire is natural. As they say, yatra yatra dhumaha tatra tatra vanhihi. So where there is a smoke, there is a fire. So this covering is natural. This is sahajam. This refers to our sahaja or instinctive kamas, instinctive desires. Example, for food, water, security, sexual desires, etc. These are natural desires. In the second example, where the dust is covering the mirror, it talks about the acquired desires. For example, we have desires for comforts, greed, yearning for the position, yearning for the latest cars, models, car models, or phones, etc. So these acquired kamas are also called as agantuka kama. You know that the dust is naturally not there on the mirror. It is an acquired dust. You will have to wipe it out to come out of these kamas. In the third example of fetus covering the covered by the membrane, that highlights our vasana kamas. Those are hardwired desires, and those are very difficult to get rid of. Like the fetus has to wait for 9 months to come out, we have to wait for these vasanas to come out, and they do it very gradually, sometimes for janmas, in order to dilute and neutralize them. These vasanas are also called as kashayam. Sometimes they do appear when we are meditating. In the next slide, we see how to tackle these three different types of kamas. The first one, the swabhavika kama. The natural or the instinctive desires cannot be prevented completely. These are as if they are automatic ones, automatic thoughts. One need not feel bad for getting these thoughts of desires, but one will have to use their free will and channelize them appropriately. They have to redirect them so that there is no obsession on these thoughts. And in the second one, the agantuka kama, just like how one has to wipe away the dust to enable the mirror to do its job of reflection, with the effort of sadhanas, with the effort of karma and upasana yoga, one will have to work on removing the mind impurities and then make the mind more poised to grasp the self-knowledge using Guru and the Shastra. So the acquired kamas can be eliminated only with the effort. And the third one, the kashaya or vasanas coming from previous janmas, which is called as vasana kama, they are at the subconscious level. One will have to patiently wait for them to go away gradually. Damage control may be done by doing more and more of punya karmas. So acceptance is required in this case. In the next slide, we see. So this kama operating at three levels covers our viveka. Idam is the word used in the word verse 3.38. The idam is nothing but our viveka shakti. And this is explained further in the verse 39. Avritam gnanametena gnanino nityavairina kamarupena kaunteya duspurena analena cha. Gnanam in this verse refers to our Viveka Shakti, our discerning power or Yukta Buddhi, our intellect in simple terms. So Kama Avritam covers our discerning intellect. Two more facts about Kama are highlighted here. One is Duspurena, means Kama can never be satisfied by feeding the Kama. It has insatiable hunger. This is like fire can never be satisfied by offering oblations. More oblations, more hunger and more fire. There is a mantra which says desire can never be subdued by fulfilling the desires, just like the fire. And Krishna himself compares kama to the fire. Na jatu kamaha kamanupabhogena samyati havisha Krishavat Mairva Bhuya Evabhivardate. So Anala used in this verse is Agni. And the second fact is that this Kama is a Nitya Vairi, a permanent enemy. To whom? To a Gnani. Gnani here means a sadhaka, one who is in pursuit of moksha, like most of us who are the Vedantic students. This is not a worry for a Gnananishta or Esthita Prajna, as he has already attained the mind mastery. Sadhanas are already complete. How will Kama be a Nitya Vairi for a spiritual student like us? Shankaracharya explains, Vedantic student has learned that Kama is an enemy for spiritual growth. So, desires on sense pleasures, even at a thought level, even at an idea level, causes a lot of guilt to this sadhaka. Once these thoughts translate to behavior of indulging in sense pleasures, then surely there is a degree of disturbance. And then it can further lead to addictions also. which leads to the physical dependence. And after addictions, the negative consequences on one's life is well known, be it on their family, their own physical health, job, society, etc. And that will again further disturb the person and obstruct their spiritual progress. So, in the form of guilt, for even a thought of desire disturbs a Vedantic student. And then, of course, because of indulgence and the negative consequence. Kama is only a temporary enemy. It's important to note this. Kama is only a temporary enemy to a non Vedantic person, somebody who is very materialistic, a Charvaka, as there is no guilt either on the thought of sense pleasure or in their actions. Problem is only at the later stages after addictions take place. So, Gnani hi janati, only a sadhaka knows Kama is an enemy. Therefore, the guilt on the thoughts of desire, as he knows that Kama will prayuktaha anartha, push, push him to samsara. By indulging in such kama dukkhi cha bhaved, ongoing sufferings only. Therefore, karma is a nitya vairi for a sadhaka. In the next slide, we see. So, does that mean that it is more beneficial to be a non-Vedantic person, a materialist, as karma is a nitya vairi only to a spiritual seeker? Shankaracharya uses the word murkaha for such non-Vedantins, such materialistic people, as they look at karma as their friend initially without knowing the later grave consequences of suffering. Only when they get there, they regret. They regret befriending karma. But it is too late for all of them, as there is no U-turn at all. Advantage for a Vedantin is that they can prevent a problem occurring, whereas a non-Vedantin will have to work for the cure. We all know on any day, prevention is better than cure. Swami Dayananda Swami beautifully says, in the name of freedom and the free will, if one decides to smoke cigarette, he loses the free will of not smoking. And over time, his free will and freedom will be hijacked by the cigarette itself. And then he becomes dependent on the cigarette. This is this is the same story for all the binding desires that people go through. So, a gnani, although can't prevent the thought of desire, he converts them into non-binding desires and uses their action for the loka sangraha. In the next slide, we see. So, Sri Krishna has taught one of the most important lessons required for our happy living. That is, if we are unhappy, it is because of our internal enemy, karma. So, Vedantic student should stop complaining on others, should stop complaining on the world for their sufferings. Instead, deal with the external problems practically. But most importantly, realize that the internal suffering is because of their desire. Vedantic student then understands that karma leads to unrealistic expectations from others, unrealistic expectations from the world, and even from the God, and the unrealistic expectation from our own body mind also. So know that karma is the root cause which manipulates our intellect, leading to distorted expectations, and that leads to samsara or suffering. It's necessary to note that kama, which is being referred to all throughout this chapter, is ashuddha kama, or the binding desire for the finite material goals. By causing avarana to intellect, kama obstructs our spiritual progress, as karma yoga and gnana yoga is not possible at all. Also, such a person can even take up to akramas, adharmic activities, leading to complete spiritual downfall. In the next slide, we see how does karma become so powerful? That's because it operates through three important bases and gets into us systematically, as if like a organized mafia, as if like a organized terrorist. Let's see the verse 40. Indriyani mano buddhirasya uchyate etair vimoha vimohayatyesha gnanamrutya dehinam. Three bases are the breeding grounds for the kama, and they are mentioned here. Indriya, the sense organs; manaha, the mind; buddhi, the intellect. Shankaracharya says it is not only the Jnanendriyas, even Karmendriyas, Vak, Pani, Pada, Payu, and Upastha are also addicted. We know the phrases of muscle memory, gut memory, etc. Sense organs are the gateways, but Karmendriyas too get captured by the desires. And then the Manaha. Once the Indriyas surrender because of the pleasures, then mind keeps on ruminating on the sense objects. We have seen that in the second chapter, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha. Then Buddhi, the intellect too, gets forced to rationalizing the behaviors of the mind. And Indriyas, Buddhi start to justify the sense pleasures as it is already overpowered by the mighty Kama. As told in the Kathopanishad in Ratakalpana example, when the intellect is drunk, the Ashuddha Kama, drunk with the Ashuddha Kama, the mind is out of control. The sense organs are like the wild horses, and the person can never reach the destination. Sense organs, mind, buddhi should ideally be our allies for spiritual growth. Instead, Ashuddha Kama hijacks these allies and makes them as bases and leads a person in perpetual ahankara and mamakara by deluding through a range of ways by covering our Viveka Shakti. Viveka initially it deludes us by obscuring our Viveka of Dharma and Adharma, and then later on the Viveka of the Atma and Anatma also. Hari Om sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Divakar, for a very nice explanation of these three verses. So this brings about a nice conclusion of the third chapter dealing with Karma Yoga, where Arjuna asked this question: I know what is right and what is wrong. What is that force that makes me do something wrong? And Sri Krishna gives so many examples. The Lord's presence in our heart is not seen because of various perversions in our mind, and very nicely brought out in these three examples: mild, moderate, and very severe, and how we need to work on each of these levels. And Swamiji also explained, which was nicely spoken by Dr. Divakar, when you want to attack the enemy, see the basis from which they function. The bases are the sense organs, the mind, and the intellect. So we need to work on all these. And when it comes to this, it comes is, how do we work on that? And that will be explained by Apeksha. Apeksha, please.
Hari Om, sir. So today, this is a beautiful verse that has been given to me, and this talks about the very, very important first step of anyone's life. Here, Krishna is telling Arjuna, "Oh Arjuna, therefore, controlling the sense organs first, may you give up this sinful one, which is the destroyer of jnana and vijnana." We will learn about this. Tasmat Twami Indriyaniyadoh Niyamah Bhartarsharbha Papamanam Prajaihienam Jnana Vijnana Nashanam. This is a very, very important line. Jnana Vijnana Nashanam. Next slide, sir. So let's learn about karma. Karma means desire and what are its consequences. Here Krishna is talking about the effect of karma and its consequences. Now, if you have any desire in your life, it can delude a person and it leads to more and more and more dependence on on your desires, and we will see it. There's a beautiful example that will be coming up. When you are a slave of your desire, you won't get an opportunity for jnanam. But when your desires are your slave, you will always find time. So you look at yourself. You are running after, if you observe your life, every time we are running after, from morning till night, we are running after this desire, this desire, this desire. And nowadays people say we don't have time for jnanam. So Krishna is here saying, when you are running after your desires, you will always say you won't have time. But when desires are your slave, you will have time for jnanam. People nowadays says this very common quote, especially in our generation, is time is money. So we should be very, very careful. But in fact, if you are sensible and you have a little jnanam, you will say time is moksha, because when you will spend time on learning the knowledge and then slowly systematic reading the scriptures, you will you will be able to implement jnanam also in your life. But Krishna here says a very important line: kama leads to jnana vijnanaha nashanam. So let's see karma, when it covers our discriminative power, what are its consequences? The consequence is jnana vijnana nashnam. Now you will say, what is jnana? What is vijnana? So Atma Jnanam normally takes in two stages in a person's life. The first stage is when we are reading the scriptures. So for example, if it's me, I will say, I understand after reading our scriptures that I am the body. I am this body, and also I have a soul, which most of the people after reading the scriptures says that. The second stage is Vijnanam, where you don't say that I am the body, you say I am the Atma. Who am I? I am the Atma. And this body is just a temporary medium that we have been given. It's like, you wear the clothes and they just go away after some time. So I have an Atma is Jnanam. I have an Atma inside me is Jnanam, but I am the Atma is the Vijnanam. And karma leads to the destruction of Jnana and Vijnana. So one has to conquer karma. So how do you do that? So Krishna is giving the first step. How can a person handle the karma? Krishna here has suggested three methods. And the first step, very, very important, is discipline of the sense organs. And that's what is being talked about in this verse. So filtering what enters your mind. You just, you have to be very, very careful what you are seeing, what you are listening, how you are speaking. It should not enter without your permission through your sense organs. So we have to, and the very first step that Swamiji also talks about while saying this is start disciplining your sense organs, beginning with our tongue. The tongue is the only sense organs which is used for two work, right? First is for eating, and also the second for speaking. So once you should begin with your tongue. So control the words that you speak. Think before you speak. Your words are very, very precious. Normally, we do the opposite. We speak and then we think, but it should be the reverse. And also, discipline in eating is also very important. And we will see in subsequent verses and later chapters the importance of sattvic food, rajasic food, and tamasic food. The second step, just in little I'll say, because the first step is Dhamma, that means disciplining the sense organs where Krishna talks here. The second step is Sama, which means mental discipline, the thoughts that are coming in your mind, the negative thoughts that come in your mind, and how do you handle them. And the third step is Viveka. So Viveka is understanding, the jnana, reading the scriptures and using them and knowing what is real and what is not real and how to implement that. So master the problem of karma, which destroys both jnanam and vijnanam. So here we have seen the technical definition. Next slide, sir. Here's a beautiful example that I came across while reading about this verse. And I think I have given the whole story here, but I'll be explaining this in short. So whenever you have time, you can pause it and read the whole story. It's a beautiful story. If we understand this story, we will realize how futile is our attempt of running after the desires. So there are these two people who are standing here, Ramesh and Dinesha, and they're sharing the same hostel room. So it's night in the 10 o'clock, and Ramesh suddenly says to Dinesh that, I want to smoke a cigarette and I want to smoke it. Dinesh says, it's very late at the night. Forget about the cigarettes and go to sleep, because, early to sleep and early to rise, we should follow that. Right. But Ramesh says, no, I will not be able to sleep until I have that cigarette. So he goes from 10 o'clock for 2 hours. He goes in search of the shop. All the shops are closed. And at 12 o'clock, he finally finds a shop, takes a cigarette. It can be anything, and comes back. And in the morning when he wakes up, his friend asks him, so Ramesh, when did you sleep at night? Next slide, sir. So, Ramesh says, I slept at midnight, at around 12:30. So, then Dinesh says, oh, so for 2 hours, you went after searching for the cigarette. You were, you were irritated. You were running after that desire and you wanted to have the cigarette. And then at 12:30, when you had that cigarette, it's very important line. You read this. Look, at 10 p.m., you did not have any desires for cigarettes and you were peaceful. Right. So at 12:30, you again came back to the same state that I was at 10 p.m. So you created a desire in your mind that I want, your mind actually created a desire that I want to have a cigarette, made you run for 2 hours, and at 12:30, you came back to the same state that I was at 10 p.m. So from 10 p.m. to midnight, you were agitated, you were running after the desire, and once that desire was fulfilled, you were back to square zero and you went to sleep. I, on the other hand, did not create any such desire. I was peaceful, I slept peacefully, and I woke up also very peacefully. So, in this way, if you contemplate upon this example, I found it very useful for me because I realized that it can be cigarette, it can be tea, it can be your business, it can be any goal that you set for yourself. You create desire in your mind and you think that after completing the desire we will be fulfilled. It will not be like this. We will never be fulfilled. If desires are there, it will never be fulfilled. So control it by the first step, which is your sense organs, and start with your tongue, which is the most important thing. So that's the essence of this shloka. Hari Om, sir.
Thank you very much, Apeksha, for a nice explanation of this particular verse with good examples. So start with the discipline of your sense organs. Learn to handle the problem of karma. Karma is not only obstacle for Jnana Yoga, it will destroy Jnanam and also intellect. So what we have seen is Sri Krishna is telling us from the sense organs to the mind to the intellect, and from the intellect to the Mahat, from the Mahat to finally to the self. So these are all based on these two important verses of the Kathopanishad, which have been summarized in this chapter. While explaining this, Swamiji has also given us some very nice inputs where he has said that I know what is right and I know what is wrong. How do I work on it? For which he says, let us have viveka. Let us be clear that as a spiritual person, I need to know what is right and what is wrong for me on a long term. Let me have a certain sankalpa. That means I use all my manas buddhi to avoid. Then there is something called a pratipaksha bhavana. Go in the opposite direction, because once I face my enemy like Vali, 50% of my energy goes for the object that I am controlling. Finally, it is through prarthana and through satsanga. And with that, we come to the glorious conclusion of the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Over to Sri Venkatesh Prasad.
Thank you, sir, and all speakers of the day for a wonderful session. With this, we are completing study of chapter 3. Next Monday, we will commence chapter 4, Dana Karma Sannyasa Yoga. Before that, let's tune in for 17th session of Katha Upanishad at 6:45 p.m. on coming Friday, 1st March 2024. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you, sir.